product can change any time of the year, etc., depending on what your customer is saying. So it's important to be very mindful of like not falling in love with the product and focusing really on like how do you create value. That's one. And then there's another component of which sometimes I tend to see a lot, even with opportunities that I've had to support and mentor other founders, etc., where you find people like, I have this great idea, but it's an idea until you start acting on it. So if you have an idea and you know how to create value, don't wait. And there's no perfect, if you're going to wait for the perfect time to start, there's not going to be a perfect time to start. So if you know that you can be a contributing or a force of change in the community in one way or another by creating a very compelling value, then take the leap. Take the leap and start now.
This is the Startup Junkies podcast.
Welcome to the Startup Junkies podcast. I'm Danny Dong here with the Fuel Accelerator. I run operations. Here with me today is Calvin Mihanda out of Brooklyn, New York with Vital Audio. Apparently, you can pull your heart rate, respiratory rate, and blood pressure from your voice. Who knows? Calvin, can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here. So, yes, we have developed the very first infrastructure layer that translates everyday conversation into vital signs. From phone calls to outreach to telehealth visit, we use the conversations that are happening to really capture and extract vital signs, heart rate variability, respiratory metrics, as well as blood pressure, all straight from the voice. And we're able to do this just by leveraging signal processing and machine learning at its finest.
Most people hear you can pull your vitals from audio and they think it's science fiction. How does that actually work?
Yeah, so the way the technology works is really leveraging existing more computing power today in present day from signal processing and machine learning algorithms. What we actually do with the technology or with the algorithm is our ability to really isolate audible frequencies that are produced by just speaking, separate them directly from cardiopulmonary frequencies, which are already embedded in the voice due to your heart functioning, squeezing the blood, as well as like your lungs filling up with air and breathing out, etc. So it's really not, it's not like a Pandora box or a black box as people think. It's more of like a true science that has actually been validated through clinical processes to get to where it is today. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Speaking of clinical processes, you've got some pretty impressive clients on your shortlist so far. Can you talk to us about those?
Yeah, so we've actually been very fortunate in the process of building the company to really establish strong clinical partnerships, and we leverage a lot of our clinical champions to drive conversations and engagements to close these partnerships. Some of the most notable partnerships that we've been successful in closing include NYU Langone, which is our parent hospital and ecosystem. We were spun out of some of the labs out of the NYU and collaborated with the entire ecosystem to get some of the very first IP and product to market. We have Stony Brook Medical Center with support from former NYU support to just help us get our foot in the door, including, and then in addition to those two, we have Mayo Clinic, collaboration that is spanning across 4 campuses, 2 campuses in Arizona, one campus in Minneapolis and one in Florida. So, and then we have other clinics and partners that we actually collaborate at a lower scale.
No, that's amazing. So we've got Mayo Clinic, NYU Langone, Stony Brook, Minnesota Heart Hospital. Minneapolis Heart Hospital.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Calvin, can you tell us more about your background and how you got started with Vital Audio? Is this your first go at a startup?
Yes, so boring background, but very interesting as well. So been in the healthcare space a little bit over a decade, and I've had the opportunity to work or wear several hats. early on in the ecosystem, I was the guy that you never wanted to see walk into your hospital room, to be quite honest. I was the guy who knocks into inpatient rooms to just like, hey, I'm here to collect your deductible or liability.
Yeah.
So I've seen that side, the ugly side of that healthcare system, and then I transitioned to more clinical role, worked as a first responder, worked in the emergency room, urgent care, and later on during COVID, I supported the development of a community rapid response team that under a company named CityBlock, currently one of the unicorns around the world, and possibly one of the earliest company to initiate most of the tech-enabled support for patients without them being in hospital. Later on, transitioned more to clinical research. So CityBlock was my very first play for like startup, getting to learn a little bit more of the ecosystem, what really shakes it, what really moves the needle, and then jumped into building Vital Audio, just catalyzed by my personal experience as well as professional experience.
Calvin, you've been a part of Techstars and now the Fuel Accelerator. What's been the differences for you? Because I know, these are drastically different programs, but we're looking to do the same thing with scaling up startups.
Yeah, so I think like different stages, different perspective from each program. We joined Techstars early on while we're still like really trying to figure out and make sense of like what we're doing, which one thing that I would say it's very valuable across the board for like each programs is really valuing the founder as an individual component and the ability to execute and accelerate most of our ability to deliver. So that's one. And then what separates Fuel program from like Techstars is that ability to really curate most of the customer meetings, which is so personalized, and just thinking of it at scale, doing it for one startup is one thing versus doing it for other 10 plus companies. It's a very different process and a different perspective of what that looks like. So definitely the component of curating engagement between the Arkansas's ecosystem and different stakeholders from different hospitals, and I hope I don't butcher this, is UAMS, which is always like it kind of is like a mouthful with my accent time to time. And then your Baptist and all the other hospitals that have actually come to the table to just really play. And the idea is our ability to deliver is by really encountering and engaging with these stakeholders, which are otherwise sometimes, depending on the geographic that we are located, it's very hard to actually tap into that true ecosystem if you're not really embedded in the community itself. So the community aspect, the engagement and the collaboration across like just the healthcare ecosystem, the Fuel program team, as well as like all the other companies that Fuel has actually really bring to the fold is quite unique value prop for sure. Yeah.
No, thanks for that spiel. It's always good to know how we kind of stack up against the other, nationally renowned accelerators who are, running similar programs, but hoping for, more more fruitful outcomes for the health outcomes here in Arkansas. My next question is, I know your background in biomedical engineering has kind of spurred all of this success and traction that you've had with Vital Audio, but what specifically, not health related, about your background has, kind of powered you through to kind of push forward in the startup scene?
Yeah, so I think if you ask anyone that I've had the opportunity to work with from the early stage of our journey, is built to last. I think like one of my upbringing, like I'm originally from Tanzania, so by definition, I am an immigrant to the core. And what I've had the opportunity to really take from my mother country, Tanzania, to where I've actually had the opportunity to leave from Germany as well and bringing all that to the US is really the resilience and the ability to really function and operate even with limited resources, being able to survive and keep things going even when you don't know what tomorrow looks like. So I think resilience is a component that I actually carry. I am also very focused on like the people that I work with. So I am a firm believer of like how I show up at work is a reflection of how the rest of my team shows up. If I am grumpy, I do expect my entire team to actually have and carry with the same energy across the board. So for me, it's attitude goes a long way, really, from resilience, attitude, and just being like being able to think on your feet for the most part. But key things is like, and something that I've actually learned to live by is it's very easy to actually teach anyone like technical skills, but there's no blueprint on how to actually teach someone to be like a good human.
Right, those soft skills are important.
Exactly. So I feel like having good people that will remind you of like how you've started, and I would challenge any startup to tell me like they've not had a bad day in like the process of building.
Oh, for
and
sure.
We all encounter that. And the one thing that even keeps me going is like there's times where I was overly worried about like, oh, my team is not going to be able to make this, or someone has a kid, how does that look, and so forth and so on. And there's a constant reminder of like, hey, we're doing this together. My problems are my problems.
Right.
Even though like I know for a fact that I am carrying the weight of like the team, but it's like that constant reminder and collaboration with the right people goes a long way in just like entire building process. Yeah.
The Startup Junkies podcast is brought to you in part by Arise. Arise helps Arkansas tech and tech-enabled startups grow with no-cost coaching, capital navigation, and expert connections so founders can scale faster. Learn more at arisearkansas.org.
No, resilience and having soft skills and, just being a solid foundation for a team is, I think that's quite good advice for any startup founder that we have.
Yeah.
Other than that, do you have any other good advice for anybody who's just trying to start a startup right now? Because, some people who are watching this, they're either deep in the startup ecosystem or they might have just came across this and just wanted some general advice on how to, get to the finish line or get to the starting line even.
Yeah, well, I have two things, and I think we have a unique product, and even with a unique product, one of the things that I'm always constantly reminded is really fall in love with the problem, not the product. The product can change any time of the year, etc., depending on what your customer is saying. So it's important to be very mindful of like not falling in love with the product and focusing really on like how do you create value. That's one. And then there's another component of which sometimes I tend to see a lot, even with opportunities that I've had to support and mentor other founders, etc., where you find people like, I have this great idea, but it's an idea until you start acting on it. So if you have an idea and you know how to create value, don't wait. And there's no perfect, if you're going to wait for the perfect time to start, there's not going to be a perfect time to start. So if you know that you can be a contributing or a force of change in the community in one way or another by creating a very compelling value, then take the leap. Take the leap and start now. You don't need to wait until things are perfect.
That tracks with a lot of the advice that I've heard before. People tell me to do it scared.
Yeah. It's very, and I'm not gonna lie, like it's definitely a scary process. There is a certain level of security you give up. There is a certain level of peace that you actually let go as you start building. And I like to think like as engineers, we're really trained to identify a problem, find a solution, and then work on finding 10,000 ways why not to actually implement that solution. And I think that's what most of the ecosystem is designed. It's really designed to like, hey, stay and continue building within the ecosystem that you're doing. But there's no right or wrong. It's more of like, how do I create value? And if you are confident in your ability to create value, then you should definitely give it a shot.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
No, and I guess last question for me. You said something about an ecosystem. What's your favorite thing about the Arkansas startup ecosystem that you've experienced from being between Little Rock and Bentonville?
Yeah, so one, I'll say the hush puppies are still a memorable component of like my...
yeah, stay away from those. Those are dangerous. Hush puppies are dangerous.
Yeah. But one thing about actually just... I'm from New York. I currently live in New York right now, but there's this stereotype of like New Yorkers do not like to talk and do small talks, etc. But there's an aspect of community that I find it here that I have not seen it in New York yet, which I appreciate. The level of like, hey, you're stuck. I would love to actually try and contribute and help right now. Before even getting prompted, that is a very unique process or like level of community ties that you don't always observe in every other community.
Are Arkansans as nice as they say they are?
I would say in the most bold statement, yes, they are, for sure.
Wonderful.
Sure. Yeah. So I do appreciate that a lot, and how just walking into a room, even I think one of the things that I'm continuously observing, even from the time in Little Rock and now here in Bentonville, I feel like that same atmosphere actually has a way of like rubbing off on people, and I'm seeing that even like the cohort with like a very diverse group across the nation still embracing that mentality of like really community ties and so forth. So I do love that a lot. Yeah.
When it comes to pulling vital signs from your voice, where do you see this most applicable, especially in Arkansas where rural health is such a huge focus?
Yeah, so I love that question because one of the motivation around like building vital audio is really stems from that access to care and also cutting the cost of care. For the most part, hard to reach areas or even if you live in a major city, like an ambulance travels about 5 minutes to get to a hospital, etc. So, but if you live in a remote region, that is a different story. You travel 30, 45 minutes, even an hour at times.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Exactly, yeah. And so the entire idea is really like the ability to share the data that personalize care should not be confined inside the four walls of hospitals and clinics. And it should be accessible across every avenue that care is being delivered. So if you look at a global scale, how many household can afford having a specialized device or a wearable, etc., versus how many household has access to a traditional phone, mobile phone, you will observe more than 99% of the household has at least one phone. So the entire idea is patients, providers, they have several avenues that leverage phones, texting, and as an ability to communicate and engage in personalized care. And we want to be at the forefront of making sure that that is achievable, meaning that personalized care can be achieved both in rural settings, even in major cities, and primarily in rural settings where resources are those areas which are hard to reach, for one, and then those mostly overlooked communities where they don't get the priority that other major cities actually get the opportunity to extend to the communities. So it's really about closing those gaps whenever patients leave the four walls of hospital. It's really to close the gaps whenever patient is not feeling well and they feel like they need to connect with their provider and they need to get some support. Healthcare is designed, we're seeing healthcare moving really to that old way of practicing medicine of instead of having patients come to you, how do you also like cater for the patients to be wherever they are? And so we want to make sure we are in about 18 to 24 months, our goal is really to be that infrastructure layer of vital signs data across like all the American health system all together in totality. Yeah.
Thank you for your time today, Nyamitse. Where can we find you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn for the most part. I am a very boring guy. I have social media, but LinkedIn I'm where is most active. And
how do I get on Vital Audio's website? What is that link?
The Vital Audio website is vitalaudio.io. You can also reach out. There's a free demo that is tied to the website. So if you're curious of like really, does it really work? So please feel free to just hop on the website, check it out. And if you really want to connect with me, you could also request the demo on the website. And I usually schedule the demos within 24 hours of like a request. And so we can actually meet.
Awesome.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time today, Calvin.
Thank you very much.
Looking forward to seeing Vital Audio kind of take over.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share with a friend. Subscribe and review because it matters to us and we want to hear from you. If you're interested in learning how to work with us, check out the information below. See you next week.